anything about real estate. Let's take it as if I always tell ChatGPT when I'm like, describe, describe Rene Descartes, 6 theories on religion or whatever. I just completely made that up. But explain it to me as if you're explaining it to a second grader.
Exactly.
Right. Or whatever. So if you were to explain real estate, let's start at A and let's try to get to Z. You're explaining it to a second grader. I come to you, Marty. Hey, I want to get into real estate, because that's like the general term that I think people, you know what I mean? They're not like, I want to get into house. I want to get into commercial. They're just saying, I want to get into real estate. How do I do that?
Sure. So there's a million different ways to do real estate. And I've been trying to explore different aspects of it to see what I like the most. But you can break it down into a couple sectors. There's residential, and that's going to be your houses. A duplex like this is still considered residential, a 4-family. And if anybody doesn't know what that is, it's just one singular building with 4 units, typically 2 up top, 2 below. And that's when you hear about house hacking, that's typically what people are referring to, like a residential type building, a 4-family, a duplex, live in 1 unit, rent out the others. Then there's a commercial side of things, which I do for my job, which is retail spaces. Literally everything outside of residential.
Living. Is that everything outside of living?
Office buildings. Yeah. Almost anything else. You have like industrial. I think we don't really need to get into that.
But yeah, residential
and commercial
are there.
Yes.
Commercial, we can assume someone's not. They might be getting
operating a business out of.
Yeah. Gotcha. Okay, this is great. That's a bit okay. Kind of point 1.
Sure.
Okay. So yeah. So okay, Marty. Okay, I have the option of going into commercial or residential. What do you suggest? What should I hop into? I'm kind of a young kid. I don't have a lot of cash on hand. Where should I go?
If you say hop into, I would say residential. Like what I'm doing is how you can jump into it. I think like low barriers to entry. Commercial, definitely much higher barriers. Typically just larger properties, more expensive. They produce more income, therefore they're typically going to be a little more expensive to get into. So yeah, first step for something like this is treat it just like buying a house.
Okay.
As far as the process itself, I shouldn't say treat it the exact same, but the process of getting pre-approved, going out, touring houses, it's the exact same process as far as a house versus a duplex. The only differences become, obviously, there's income. So
all right, so treat it. Okay, so you say treat it as if you're buying a house. What does that mean? Treat it as if I'm buying a house? Because let's say I don't even know how to buy a house.
Sure. Try to go through a simplified version of the process I went through, like for the first one. So first property, once again, treating it like buying a house. So instead of, I don't think it's really useful if you are buying it yourself to go out and waste a bunch of time looking for properties that you don't even know if you can afford. So I would say 100% first step, getting with, a lender that you trust.
Is that the same as a real estate agent?
No. Lender is more so the bank, right? So who's giving you the money for the property? Who's essentially buying the property?
And I'm gonna keep asking you really dumb questions.
No, of course.
I'm a member of Together Credit Union. Do I have to? Can I only get my loan from Together Credit Union, or can I just go over to Commerce and then?
Yeah, you go once again anywhere you would trust. Like in my case, my cousin does mortgages for a bank, so I went to him. I said, here's the info. I answered every question I needed, provided all the documents he needed, got pre-approved. Now you have a benchmark, right? What can I afford? Because the worst thing in the world to me, and I had this happen actually even after getting pre-approved, but you get pre-approved by a bank. They tell you, we will give you a loan for this amount of money. Now I go shop, right?
Pre-approved means you have the approval kind of before having to go out and
it's essentially like the initial approval for what do they think you can realistically, they could approve a loan for you. And then that's why I say don't waste time looking at properties. Prior to that, I do it for fun sometimes, but like if you're really interested in buying, you should know what you can afford first.
Gotcha. Okay.
Because what I was getting at is if you find this perfect property and they're going quick and you got to be fast, and you're not pre-approved, now you got to go through that process when you already found the property, potentially lose out on it, or you make an offer on the property that you're really not approved or could not get a loan for. Now you just wasted time.
So if I'm going to a bank, you're saying first step, go to a lender that you trust. That's like essentially step number one.
If you are not getting private money, let's say.
If you are not getting private money. And then how, like, let's take a step there and just go, okay, I walk into this bank right now at this very moment. I go, hey, I want to get approved for a loan to buy a house. Or like, what questions am I asking to begin with? Do I need to go in with a plan from the get-go?
Realistically, they should be able to walk you through that based on what you want.
So I don't
like
need
you don't
plan
necessarily
per se.
have to know every single thing about it. That's the reason those people are there. Okay. I mean, it's similar to a real estate agent. If you don't know a lot about real estate, you use a real estate agent so they can walk you through those processes. So no, I would not I think that's a discouraging thing. And it was for me to feel like you need to know everything before you go talk to these people. But I think you're very good about, asking questions that you might feel are stupid, but
100%.
So if you have no shame in that, then I think that would be a huge plus in like a scenario like that, to not worry about that and just go in and let them do their job and walk you through it. I'm not saying you should be, have no knowledge of the subject. You want to be able to understand what they're telling you. Don't just take everything they have to say as the truth, but, enough to make sure, all right, I think this person knows what they're talking about. They're helping me through the process. I feel comfortable. And doing it with somebody I trusted and happened to be related to, I think made that go quite a bit smoother.
Okay. And so they're going to say, based on your income, we'll give you
credit
this amount
score.
of money, based on your income. So what are the factors? Income, credit score?
Yeah. So it's going to be treated differently for different people. Like, okay. I mean, the main thing when I initially got pre-approved would have been just what income do you have, what assets, like how much money do you have saved up right now, and then what is your credit score would probably have been the main factors, I would assume. But then this go around, once you're a landlord, I believe for a year, most cases, you can treat your rental income as income on paper, right?
Okay. So
even though at the other duplex, those two tenants are essentially just paying all the expenses for the building, I'm not seeing a lot of money out of that. The bank still sees that as income,
so
right?
They're tracking revenue, not necessarily profit. Is that a fair way to put it?
Yes. So they're recognizing that income on paper, and I can count it, I guess, is the way I would put it. Obviously, they would still recognize that I have a lot of debt on that property, but it's a huge plus, and I think gives you more leverage as you have more properties. You can use those in more creative ways to get financing for more deals.
Okay. All right, so we've done that. We've gone in, okay, hey, this is my credit score. This is my income. This is how much cash I have on hand currently. What's next? Where am I going? How much money is it? Are they in, like, they're not part of the building process. They're literally just part of the, okay, based on this and what you're trying to attain, we'll give you this X amount of money.
Yeah.
Like if I wanted to go buy a new Jeep Grand Cherokee for $120,000 souped up with a catalytic converter and a carburetor in it, then it was $120,000. Are they going to give me the same amount of money that they would for that as they would have for
that? I don't know. I don't have a car loan. I've never done that.
Okay.
Luckily, but I don't know if that's treated differently. I would imagine it's similar concept.
Okay, but they are doing, okay, we're just dealing with the money. We're
correct,
just giving you,
correct.
Yeah, we're not touching.
So they're not involved in the closest I would say they get to like the property would be they want to know what it's worth, right? Okay. If they're going to give you, Jack, a loan on a property, they want to know what that property is worth for obvious reasons. If they're
let's say because they're essentially buying it. Is that?
Yes. So at the end of the day, essentially the bank owns your property. You are paying it back, paying them back. Okay. So, yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. So are the banks the biggest real estate owners in the United States? That's a question.
It's a great question. Yeah. Don't know.
Okay. This is fun. See, I like getting into this shit.
Yeah. But I mean, I would say like the closest, once again, they would get to a property is the fact that they're going to do an appraisal on it.
Gotcha.
And all that is an expert opinion, essentially, of they're going to send someone out, typically, I mean, physically to the property to walk it. And it's a very detailed process. I've met one inspector for a refinance at my other property. I was not there for the initial one. But detailed process, and based on these factors and what other buildings, like called comps, essentially similar properties, what those are selling for. Based on all of that information, they give an expert opinion on what that property is worth, right? So that, once again, to like answer your question about are they involved in the process, that's probably the closest they get like hands-on at the property, if that's what you're getting at. But yeah, overall, they're handling the money. The real estate agent then handles more so the transaction from buyer or from seller to buyer.
Gotcha. Okay, so we'll hop into so the bank they've looked at everything. They've given me money. They've assessed how. So, they're looking at the house that you're purchasing. Okay, so now there's a few wires crossing my mind. They're looking at the house that you're purchasing, but we also can't be looking at a bunch of different houses beforehand because we don't know how much we're getting in the first place. So is that like a 2-part process? Well, with the lender,
you can most definitely be looking at multiple properties at any given time. I guess when I mean so they've pre-approved you for a property, right? And then you're working with the real estate agent to then find a property to buy, right?
Okay, gotcha. So gotcha.
So now let's just say we locked in on a property and we want to make an offer. Then you're going to have the bank gets back involved. They do their appraisal to make sure it's worth whatever amount that you're buying it for or more, potentially. Like, won't go into the weeds and all that. But yeah, I mean, that's the next step where the bank would be involved in that process.
Okay. So, I'm just going to keep going back through these because I think my audience are a bunch of schmucks. No, I'm kidding.
I like it. I mean, outline the process.
Yeah. I'm the schmuck here. Oh my God. Okay. That could be a really good podcast title. Okay. I might have to switch up my branding. I'm the schmuck. Maybe something around that. Oh, that's great. Okay. Something beautiful has come from this conversation. Okay. So at first you said, okay, first step is going to the lender, going to the bank. And then so are they giving me a loan after that initial meeting? But you're saying, no, they're not giving you a loan after that initial meeting? Like
they're giving you a pre-approval that says we will.
Gotcha. No number to it.
No, there is a number to it.
Oh, there is a number.
So based on your finances, your assets, credit score, everything we went over earlier. So
let's say they said, okay.
They would say, Jack, you're pre-approved. We would give you a loan up to
$500,000. Yeah, $500,000.
Sure. Okay, $500,000. Now all right, that's my budget, right? And then you start shopping. Okay. And let me be upfront also. This is not 100% the way this process has to go. In my mind, this made the most sense for these particular properties.
Great.
But yeah, so pre-approval, you have your budget, you start shopping for buildings.
Okay.
If you find one, you say, all right, I can get a loan for $500,000. Let's just keep the numbers easy. This property is listed for $500,000, right? And your offer is $500,000. Keep it all easy.
Yeah.
What I mean about that appraisal is that the bank has to ensure that property is truly worth it. What if their opinion says this property is really only worth? People can list a property whatever they want. Will somebody buy it? I don't know, but is that property truly worth it based on all those factors we discussed? That would be the appraisal in essence.
Okay.
And you want to make sure, yes, this needs to be worth that amount or higher. Maybe you buy a property for $500,000. The appraisal says it's worth $550,000. Great. If it says it's worth $50,000 less, that's an issue.
Okay. Why is that an issue?
You do not want to get a loan on a property, borrow that much money to buy something that is not considered worth that much money, right? Now you just borrowed more than it's truly worth.
And so what is that?
You already just put yourself in a hole. Now.
You put yourself in a hole. So I don't know, could I theoretically take, so let's say I bought it for 450, or I took the loan out for 500,000. The property is worth 450. But I purchased it at 500,000. Is that kind of what they're like? You purchased this property for 500,000 because that's the loan we gave you, but the appraisal came through and said this was $450,000.
I would say like the issue with that, what I mean by like putting yourself in a hole, is that you're gonna owe the bank if you buy it at 500 or whatever number you gave. If you buy it at 500 and it's worth 450, you owe the bank $500,000. But what did you get in return for that? An asset that's worth 450,000. So it just, I think, does not make much sense.
Even if you're going to rent it out, let's say, like even if the plan is to rent it out for this to be a rental property, rental residential. I'm renting it out for $2,000. It's a 4-unit, $2,000 a month to each unit, $8,000 a month, $96,000 a year.
So I'd say in most cases, and I don't want to get too far into that because I think it could get confusing. Yeah. But like, long story short, would be realistically, I think in a more like a case like me, where a bank might consider me more risky because I have not been doing this for too long, or like a first-time home buyer, you might not even get the loan. Then you were pre-approved for this amount, but you got to meet certain criteria. If they say we approved you for this amount, but what you're trying to buy is worth less than what you were going to pay for it, they might not even end up giving you the loan. So it's like a contingency essentially within that contract. So like, we will give you this loan as long as certain criteria is met, and the appraisal being one. Okay. So if it doesn't appraise for the value you're going to buy it for, I think in a lot of cases, a first-time home buyer, and maybe there's exceptions to this, I don't know, I haven't run into it, but my general understanding is that you may likely not even be able to get the loan in that case.
Okay. So then we'll dive into that scenario another time. You get the loan, it's worth $500,000. You purchase the building for $500,000. What's next? How is the bank still involved or not involved? Are you renting it out to people immediately? What's going on?
Yeah. So after like closing the properties, you'll reverse everything. In my mind, I'll just give you more of a concrete example, just so we're not talking like, I feel like it's hard to picture when we're just talking really generally. But like at the first duplex, the deal was I had to live in a unit. So that's another thing. When I'm searching for properties, I got to make sure I can't buy a place that has 2 long-term tenants in place, because I have to be able to move into that property.
Why?
The way I did my deal was a particular loan that I can get a discount on the down payment. I can pay a lower down payment if I am living in that property.
And does that have to do with zoning laws and these types of things, where it's like that, so that you're not a neglectful landlord, or what?
No, nothing with zoning. Just I think, I don't know 100%, but I would imagine it's more so to the bank, less risky if I'm living there.
Okay, you're invested in the property.
But there's also deals for like first-time home buyers, just to be able to get people into properties, whether it's like government, like an FHA loan where it's backed by the government to allow people the opportunity to buy houses. You can get these lower down payments. So like the standard would be a 20% down payment. So in like a $500,000 property, that's not very doable to like the average person, right? To pay that much money down to buy that property
and
immediately.
That down payment goes to the bank. The down payment goes to the bank.
Essentially, yeah. So you're paying back the bank this whole time. So that is the amount you got to have at closing to actually buy the property. So you subtract that off your $500,000, the 20% you paid.
Okay, and 20% of 5.
Now,
what is that? 100,000.
120 something, yeah.
20, or let's say 20%.
Yeah,
as 100,000.
100,000, yeah. So
okay, so that's interesting. Okay, so I can't just go in, get approved for a loan, and they give me 500,000. I have to put something down first.
Correct. Yes.
Gotcha.
I think there's some rare, like maybe veterans I know can get potentially a 0% down, but
Jakey.
Yeah. So Yeah. So okay, so you go in 20% down on that. Once again, like that's kind of not doable for a property that expensive. Like especially at that time, I didn't have $100,000 lying around. So you live in a unit, like the house hacking thing we talked about. That got me a 5% down payment.
Got you. And where
Instead of
if you
20.
weren't living here, it maybe otherwise would have been a higher down payment.
Yeah, if it was purely investment property, if I'm just buying this with 2 tenants there, or I'm gonna put 2 tenants there, I'm not living there. 20 to 25% down
Oh
typically.
wow. So
So
it was a seriously
oh,
significant.
it's a huge difference. Yeah,
Gotcha.
yeah.
That's very interesting.
But that's exactly what I wanted to. I mean, I needed a place to live, but I didn't want to keep renting and giving other people money. I'm like, if I'm gonna pay rent, I'm gonna quote unquote like pay rent to myself.
Yep.
And that goes back into the equity of the property. What I'm paying myself every month is my rent. Is paying me. That's kind of the way I think through it.
Gotcha.
Essentially
Yep.
what it is.
Yep.
But so yeah, that's how you're able to do it at a lower down payment, make it more manageable for like a pretty average income or average scenario.